I'm Warren Sharp, and this is Sharp Football Analysis. Hopefully, it's become your favorite sports betting podcast. We've had a lot of success with our best bets. Haven't lost since the beginning of December. Let's keep it rolling here on the show today. We got a big show in store for you. We're going to be breaking down all these divisional round games. Both the number one seeds from the NFL come back into the flock. We're going to be talking about the Bills taking on the Broncos and the 49ers at the Seahawks. Both the number one seeds gets to host a game this week. Both of the teams that are visiting are on short rest. Let's discuss that soon. We're also going to be hitting the Sunday games where the Texans take on the New England Patriots. And of course, when the Rams take on the Chicago Bears, the Bears that are too hard to kill, the Bears that always keep coming back for life. Sounds like a Cocaine Bear movie or something like that. This bear is never out of it. We're going to be breaking down that game. In addition, we're going to be breaking down the national championship in college football, which is Monday night, a great game between Indiana and Miami. We've got our college football betting expert on for that. We've got Rich Hribar, who's going to be breaking down some of his favorite props momentarily. We also have our NFL referee expert talking about some of the games this week, the referees, their crews, and what it means to the outcome of games. So a massively packed show, great bets in store for you. You're not going to want to miss it. In addition, before we get into that, we're back with another $100 giveaway. Last week, Joseph K. was our $100 winner. He picked that Christian Kirk would score the first touchdown in the wild card game on Monday night between the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's an opportunity for you to win $100 into your Novig account. Just comment below who you think will score the first touchdown in the Sunday night game this week between the Rams and the Bears. And if you're right, we'll deposit $100 into your Novig account. You don't have a Novig account? Sign up in the link below. You can get a match up to $100 when you sign up for our account. And you can have a shot at winning $100 for free if you're right guessing the first touchdown score for the Rams-Bears divisional game on Sunday afternoon. What more can you ask? Let's get into the games. Divisional weekend, it's here and it's going to be glorious. If you catch the Seinfeld reference, you know what I'm talking about. This is going to be a ton of fun. We're going to break these games down one by one. Let's get started. I'm a poet. I didn't know it. We're going to break down the Denver Broncos taking on the Buffalo Bills. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills at a rest disadvantage. Now, this Denver Broncos defense has been outstanding. One of the best defenses ranked against the run, one of the best defenses ranked against the pass. That being said, I don't know that the defense is actually as good as those rankings indicate. Like a lot of teams this year, this Denver Broncos defense has not really played very many elite offenses. I think the Buffalo Bills may have a little bit of success running the football here, like they weren't able to do last week in Jacksonville, where we anticipated Josh Allen would be dropping back to throw the football a ton. It's not necessarily going to be the case in this game. That being said, the Denver Broncos have not really gone up against a murderer's row of quarterbacks either. I'll go through and name a bunch of them, but they just played Trey Lance. Prior to that, it was Chris Oladokun. Prior to that, we saw Jordan Love. Prior to that, Kenny Pickett and Geno Smith. Prior to that, Marcus Mariota. If you catch my drift, you go even further back in the season. We're talking about Cam Ward, his first start of the year, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Jackson Dart, Davis Mills, Geno Smith. The list goes on and on. Those are the quarterbacks that this Denver Broncos defense has beat. Now they have to go up against Josh Allen, arguably the best quarterback left in the AFC. The big key in this game, though, to me at least, is what happens on the side of the ball when Denver's on defense going up against Josh Allen. And it's a coaching aspect to this game, and it hinges around Vance Joseph and his desired strategy with which to attack Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills have played 5 games versus top 15 pass rushes, of which this Denver Broncos defense will be the 6th game. They've won only 2 of those games, and they haven't scored more than 26 points in any of those games. They lost 14-24 in a big upset in Atlanta to the Falcons. They lost 19-23 against the Houston Texans, and they lost 12-13 against the Philadelphia Eagles. The key, though, like I mentioned, not only do the Denver Broncos have a good pass rush, the key is that they're also very good when they do not blitz the quarterback. They have a very high pressure rate even when not blitzing the quarterback. And that's going to be important in this game. I want to take you back to the last 2 times that the Denver Broncos played the Buffalo Bills. 1 year ago, Denver went in the wild card round into Buffalo and played the Bills. Denver was only losing that game at halftime 10-7. Bo Nix was a rookie going on the road. The game is a 3-point game. They were obviously covering the spread at that point in time. They were expected to get blown out. In the second half, they did get blown out. They lost that game 31-7. Buffalo goes and scores 21 unanswered points. What happened, though, in that second half of the game? Here's what happened. In the first half, Vance Joseph blitzed Josh Allen, just 8% of dropbacks. Only 1 out of 13 dropbacks did Vance Joseph blitz Josh Allen. He didn't fare so well. For whatever reason, Vance Joseph decided to crank up the blitz rate in the second half, blitz Josh Allen on 73%, from 8% in the first half to 73% of dropbacks in the second half. It went massively sideways. And overall in that game, when Josh Allen was blitzed by Vance Joseph's defense, he took 0 sacks and was pressured only 25% of the time. The blitzes weren't working. But when Vance Joseph didn't blitz and just played regular defense, non-blitz, and tried to get natural pressure on Josh Allen, it had a lot of success. 2 sacks taken and a 45% pressure rate, up from 25% with blitzing. So it was better. And in addition, the EPA per attempt was far different. When Josh Allen was blitzed, plus 0.80 EPA per attempt. When Josh Allen was not blitzed, that dropped all the way down to plus 0.18 EPA per attempt. So much better when you didn't blitz Josh Allen. The game before that, if you can remember back to this game, it was in 2023. It was a Monday night game in Buffalo. So the last 2 times that these teams have met, Vance Joseph has called defense against the Buffalo Bills, have been in Buffalo. And in that game, it was actually Russell Wilson who was leading the charge for the Denver Broncos. Denver actually led 15-8 at halftime in Buffalo on that Monday night game. However, once again, Vance Joseph decided to blitz Josh Allen more in the second half of the game, and Josh Allen was able to outscore Denver 14-6 in the second half, took a lead 21-24, and the Broncos kicked a game-winning field goal as time expired to win 24-22. But Josh Allen was able to bring them back and have a lot of success in that game because of the blitzes. Once again, let's look back at some of the stats, and I'm going to combine the last 2 meetings between Vance Joseph and Josh Allen. When they blitz Josh Allen, 0 sacks, 15% pressure rate. When they don't blitz, 2 sacks, 1 fumble forced, and a 46% pressure rate. How about the efficiency from Josh Allen as a passer versus the blitz? Plus 0.43 EPA per attempt. When not blitzed, minus 0.10 EPA per attempt. When blitzed, 84% completions. When not blitzed, 58% completions. I mean, it couldn't get any more clear than this. Vance Joseph has the second highest blitz rate in the NFL of any defense this season at 32%. He does like to send pressure, but there have been quarterbacks where he sends pressure less frequently this season. I firmly believe that they need to send pressure very infrequently against Josh Allen. We have a case study, 2 games that mattered in Buffalo where blitzing Josh Allen did not work. Natural pressure worked far better. It actually got pressure more frequently and resulted in Josh Allen playing far poorly. So I think that we need to see an adjustment from Vance Joseph. Josh Allen is not going to be scrambling nearly as much. He's banged up. He's beat up. He got destroyed in that game last week. It was checked for a concussion, it felt like. He had this knee injury down near the goal line that he came back from, plus all the foot injuries and the other ailments that he's been dealing with. I don't see him, unless he's losing in the second half, taking off and running with the football a ton and killing you and trying to take advantage of that. Don't blitz him. Play your coverage. You're one of the best defenses in the NFL. You're one of the best defenses, top 3 in natural pressure rate. I think that's the solution for Vance Joseph to have more success here. So when you're watching this game on Saturday afternoon, pay close attention to how frequently Vance Joseph and this Denver Broncos defense chooses to blitz Josh Allen and the results of those blitzes. The nightcap on Saturday night is the San Francisco 49ers against the Seattle Seahawks. And to me, one of the biggest aspects of this game, especially when you've got a quarterback like Sam Darnold, which you can hear everything that a team is going to tell you internally about the confidence and trust and faith. But outside the building, we all sort of know we're just waiting for when Sam Darnold is going to have some mistakes that's going to cost the Seattle Seahawks the game. And so if you're the Seattle Seahawks offense, you're going to want to try to prevent Sam Darnold from losing this game as much as possible. Your defense can potentially win the game there in and of itself. The run game can have success against the San Francisco 49ers. And so that's what I want to lean into a little bit, breaking down this game. I think the key to this game, obviously for Sam Darnold, is to take care of the football. They've been reducing Sam Darnold's target depth, and Rich Hribar later on is going to be discussing some aspects of Sam Darnold and the passing attack for the Seattle Seahawks and the target depth and the safety measures that they've sort of adopted to try to minimize Sam Darnold from costing the Seattle Seahawks with turnovers. But the other aspect to this is the run game that can support the offense so that Sam Darnold doesn't even need to pass the ball as frequently. Fortunately for the Seattle Seahawks, they're going up against a very beaten up defense of the San Francisco 49ers that is without Mykel Williams. And without Mykel Williams, who got injured in, I believe, week 9 and has been out since that point in time, they are allowing 5.4 yards per carry to outside zone runs. That ranks 30th in the NFL. Seattle running backs, the last time that they played San Francisco, which was week 18, just 2 weeks ago, to earn that number 1 seed, ran outside zone 15 times, and they gained 5.4 yards per carry on those plays. This is what Kenneth Walker is built to do. 11th highest running back rate of running outside zone is Kenneth Walker, 38% of his total runs. 18% of those runs that Kenneth Walker has from outside zone result in gains of 10 plus yards. Charbonnet will have success as well, but that is the key. If you're San Francisco, you got to figure out a way to stop the run and put the game in Sam Darnold's hands. If you're Robert Saleh, that should be your goal and objective. But if you're the Seattle Seahawks, it is vital that you don't give up points early and that you allow yourself to be able to run the ball the full 60 minutes of this game. I do not anticipate, like some of Seattle's big explosive wins, where they end up getting defensive touchdowns and scoring on pick sixes against some bad quarterbacks. Brock Purdy might have an interception here because he does that from time to time, but I don't envision Brock Purdy losing the game for the San Francisco 49ers. I think the Seattle Seahawks are going to have to win the game by keeping Brock Purdy and the 49ers out of field goal range, out of the end zone, but by running the football as well and keeping Sam Darnold from turning the football over. I think that they will have success running the football here. It is a big mismatch on the ground. It's exactly what a team with Sam Darnold quarterback should lean into in this particular meeting. I'm looking forward to watching this one on Saturday night. Of all the games this weekend, the only game that features a defensive head coach against another defensive head coach is when Mike Vrabel's Patriots host DeMeco Ryans' Texans. 2 defensive-minded former players, 2 defensive-minded head coaches square off in a game with obviously the lowest total on the board, but what should be a very competitive and intriguing game that, to me, obviously you could say a game will come down to turnovers, and we talked about that with Sam Darnold, but I think this game is going to come down to execution by offenses inside of the red zone. Let's talk about that for a second. The New England Patriots defense and the Houston Texans defense ranked number 1 and number 2 at preventing teams from traveling into the red zone to score points. They keep you out of the red zone entirely. Only 23% of drives against both of these defenses actually even make it into the red zone. Interestingly, though, neither defense is particularly outstanding, like top 5 even, not even top 10, at preventing scores from inside of the red zone. So some teams have had success when they get into the red zone, but they're not getting to the red zone very frequently. The issue is, to counteract that, neither of these offenses have actually been very good inside of the red zone themselves. The New England Patriots offense has scored touchdowns on just 55% of their red zone trips this year. That ranks 23rd, aka 10th worst in the NFL. The Houston Texans offense has been even worse. They're scoring touchdowns on just 45% of their red zone trips, which ranks 30th in the NFL. So which of these offenses against defenses that are good at preventing trips to the red zone, when a trip is actually made, which of these offenses can overcome their bottom 10 historical averages in terms of converting touchdowns and punch one in, could go a long way between two offenses that might not see a lot of red zone trips thanks to how great and stellar these defenses are. You also have to expect in this game, in my opinion, that neither of these coaches are going to want their offenses and their quarterbacks to make early mistakes in this game and cost them field position or cost them points on the scoreboard. So maybe a potential slower start or more conservative approach by DeMeco Ryans and his offense. We already saw just a few days ago, CJ Stroud literally fumbled the game away almost in Pittsburgh. He had, I think, 4 fumbles. 2 of them were lost, threw an interception. It looked horrendous. They needed to settle CJ Stroud down a little bit. Don't press things. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to think about a ton of things. It looked like sometimes he wasn't even taking the snap from under center correctly because of either crowd noise or he was thinking about something else and didn't have his focus on the very moment of that snap. Those things can't happen in this game. They've got to simplify things a little bit more for CJ Stroud. This is a good enough defense from the Houston Texans that can win games just by themselves, as long as the offense doesn't lose them. It'll be interesting to see if this meeting against the Patriots is one of those such games, or if the Patriots offense has a little bit more success and more will be required of CJ Stroud. But entering this game with these two defensive-minded head coaches, the only game of the weekend that will field such a pair going head-to-head, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, especially to see the game after this one, which will be the Rams taking on the Bears. And we've got Sean McVay versus Ben Johnson, two offensive-minded head coaches, a big juxtaposition in coaching strategy and aggressiveness potentially between the early game on Sunday and the late game. Is going to be fun to watch. Rounding out divisional round weekend, we've got the LA Rams taking on the Chicago Bears. And last week on this show, when we were previewing the wild card round, we talked about the potential of the Carolina Panthers to cause a little bit of problems for the LA Rams offense, potentially throw a wrench in there, even though they're not the best defense, because of some of the things that they are actually good at doing and some of the familiarity that they had with the LA Rams. First of all, former coach with the Rams was now coaching defense for the Carolina Panthers. The Panthers are also very good at changing the picture from pre and post snap, making play action a little bit more difficult to execute, which is why the Carolina Panthers were the #1 defense against play action. And in addition, there are just some other aspects to what the Carolina Panthers might bring to the table that could cause Matthew Stafford some problems. Sure enough, what we thought the Rams should do to counteract that was play more 11 personnel, don't go under center as often, play more out of shotgun, and reduce your play action rate. Did the Rams do that against the Panthers last week? Yes, they did. Stafford was under center last week on only 46% of his dropbacks, the 3rd lowest rate of any game this season. Stafford used play action on only 17% of dropbacks, the 2nd lowest rate of any game on the season. The Rams, 11 personnel, raised from a lower rate all the way up to 60%, and they decreased their play action passing. This was to attack the weakness of the Carolina Panthers defense and not play into the strength of the Panthers defense. The difference is going to be great between last week and this week because the Rams don't have to do any of those adjustments and can play the style of offense that got them to this point in the first place when they take on the Chicago Bears. They can stick with their heavier personnel groupings that they led the NFL with. They don't have to go to 11 personnel. They can keep Matthew Stafford under center as opposed to sticking him in shotgun a ton like they did last week. They can also utilize a lot of play action because the Chicago Bears struggle against play action. The Chicago Bears defense versus play action is one of the worst in the NFL. They are allowing a 68% completion rate, which is 10th worst, 9 yards per pass attempt, which is 4th worst, and 6.4% touchdown rate, which is 10th worst. So they struggle defending play action. The Rams can increase their play action rates back to where they normally are. And now, instead of going up against a defense coordinator that's familiar with your system because he's worked for the Rams before, the Rams don't have to do that. They're going up against Dennis Allen. In 6 career games against Dennis Allen-led defenses, Stafford has thrown 15 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He's completed 64% of his passes and averaged 7.9 yards per attempt. But it's gotten even better since he joined up with Sean McVay. Stafford and McVay going up against Dennis Allen's defense, played him twice. Stafford has thrown for 8.8 and 9.6 yards per pass attempt in those 2 games. In addition, the Chicago Bears are the ones that are getting a little bit more beat up defensively. They just lost TJ Edwards, star linebacker for them, the best two-way defender in the run and pass game. He is going to be out for this game, obviously out for the season. It's going to be up to the Rams what they decide to do in terms of how the Chicago Bears defense is playing them. If the Chicago Bears defense is playing them a little bit more with base defense, then the Rams can just utilize their play action passing and throw the football all over them. If the Chicago Bears adjust and play more nickel to stop the passing, then the Rams will be able to have a fair amount of success running the football on the ground against the Chicago Bears defense, which will struggle to stop the run from these heavier personnel groupings that the Rams have. So these are some of the things that you should be on the lookout for. This is a different style of game than last week's game was against the Carolina Panthers. Even though the Bears and the Panthers both have below average defenses, they're both very different and present a very different type of matchup for the LA Rams. And this is why I think, although the Rams obviously scored enough points to defeat the Carolina Panthers, they had to do so sort of left-handed. In this game, they're going to be able to play with their dominant hand, utilizing the dominant strategy that got them to this point, and they're going to feel a lot more comfortable in doing so. What's not going to feel comfortable, obviously, is the weather. And it's going to be interesting to see how Sean McVay plays this one out, how Matthew Stafford's finger holds up in this cold climate. But this game is going to be one to watch, could potentially be an epic way to close the game, close the weekend out. And surely we're all going to stay tuned to that 4th quarter where it seems like Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, and this Chicago Bears offense has that never say die attitude. And you never feel that they're out of a game at all. And it cost the Green Bay Packers when they were up early and then came out of halftime in the second half playing with their food, punting the ball 4 straight times, not having a sense of urgency or a great strategy of play calling. Hopefully Sean McVay has already planned out how he's planning on starting the second half, because it's going to be vital that the Rams continue to score in the second half if they want to leave Chicago with a win. We won again on our best bet of the week in the wild card round. These bets have been perfect since the start of December and are an incredible 14-3 on the year. That's 82%. There are only 4 weeks left until the Super Bowl. And if you've been waiting for the right time to join us, this is a great chance to get on board. Right now, you can go to sharp.football and claim an offer to get all of my betting recommendations through the Super Bowl for 60% off. That gives you over $300 in discount. This is the best deal we're going to offer the rest of the season. Plus, with your purchase, you will also get my 50-page detailed Super Bowl report. That's a 50-page PDF giving you everything you could possibly need to bet on the biggest game of the year. Sides, totals, props, teasers, whatever market you're interested in betting. This breaks down the game in great detail and will give you an edge. This document is only shared with our playoff clients. If you're going to bet the Super Bowl, you are going to need this document to make it a profitable night. Since the start of December, a $100 bettor has won $5,248 following my betting recommendations. We have had a great end to the season, and I want you to win with us through the Super Bowl. So go to sharp.football or click the link in the description to take 60% off our postseason package. All right, the moment a lot of us have been waiting for, the national championship game is here for college football. We've got a great game in store Monday night. The Indiana Hoosiers are taking on the Miami Hurricanes, playing in their home stadium. How infrequently does this happen? Big advantage from a home field perspective for Miami. Obviously, they should be able to have some packed house there. However, if what I saw from the Indiana-Oregon game is any sign, we're going to have a lot of fans making the trip down from Indiana, trying to figure out a way to get into that stadium and represent their team as they're looking to take on this historic undefeated season. We're going to talk it through with our college football betting expert, Ryan McCrystal. You guys know him well. He's been on our show all year long for several years, breaking down everything about college football from a betting perspective. He also, by the way, stick around for after the season because he is our college football draft expert. He is going to get us ready for the NFL draft like nobody else can, with unique insights and analysis. So a lot to come yet from Ryan this spring. But let's talk about this big game, Ryan. Indiana is right now, if we look at the odds screen, laying 8.5 points. This line obviously has moved from the open. I know some people that were able to grab tickets at -7. It's now up to 8.5. I'm seeing some books out in Vegas at as high as 9. The total right now is sitting on the screen. We can see it's 47.5 everywhere. I am seeing some spots in Vegas at 47, even as low as 46.5. So there's a chance that this number drops a little bit lower to match what we're seeing out in Vegas and some of the bigger sports books there. What's your take on this game as a whole before you break down each side of the football? Big picture, the unprecedented nature of Indiana making this undefeated run, their head coach and what he brings to this matchup. Talk us through a little bit about maybe some edges with these coaches and what you think big picture about this game before we start breaking down each side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, big picture, it's a fascinating matchup. I mean, it's going to be a great story one way or the other, no matter who wins. Obviously, Curt Cignetti reviving Indiana from the depths of the sport, arguably the worst Division I program of all time, at least of the programs that have been around for as long as Indiana has been playing football at this level. It's a pretty shocking development that's happened in such a short amount of time. And then Miami, obviously, they've been at the mountain peak quite a few times throughout their history, but it's been a while. It's been a long road to get back to this stage for the first time since the 2002 season when they suffered that big upset against Ohio State. So just from a fan's perspective, even if you're just a casual fan of college football, yeah, these aren't the teams we expected to be here, but I don't know how you could ask for a better storyline. And as far as sort of a big picture perspective of the game and then the matchup with these coaches, like you mentioned, really interesting coaching matchup because I don't know if I've said it on the podcast. I mean, I've ripped Mario Cristobal a little bit in the past when we've talked about him from a game management perspective. But what I like to say about Cristobal is on a Sunday through Friday, he's a top 5 coach. He's a great program builder. He is an excellent recruiter. He's one of the best offensive line coaches in the history of the college game. So he's kind of a really, really good coach. But on Saturdays, there's about 100 guys I would rather have on the sideline. And that rubs off on his team too. He makes dumb decisions. And like we saw in that Ole Miss game, his players make dumb decisions with all of those penalties that nearly cost them that game. And it's year after year. Over the last 5 seasons, his teams have ranked 85th or worse in penalty yardage per game. It's always a problem with Mario Cristobal coach teams. On the other side, you have Curt Cignetti coaching one of the most buttoned up, polished football teams we've seen in recent years. Yeah, maybe they aren't the most talented of the, championship favorites. We're not used to seeing a team with this level of talent be favored by so much, but they just play flawless football week after week. And so there's really a big difference from a coaching perspective in terms of how they're going to have their players prepared. That could be a factor in the game as well.
So before we get into your pick on the game, let's break down both sides of the football. Let's start with Indiana's offense, Curt Cignetti, and what he brings to the scheme, the design, the strategy to take on this Miami Hurricane defense, what you expect out of Indiana. We'll come back and hit the other side of the ball momentarily.
Yeah, they've got really the perfect design to beat Miami. They get rid of the ball quickly. That's what you wanted to do against this team. And that's what we saw Ole Miss do last week. That's another offense that gets rid of the ball quickly. And when you're going up a defense whose overwhelming strength is the pass rush, that's the way to beat them. It's hard to line up and protect your quarterback in the pocket for 3+ seconds against a defense like this with Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor that can just get after you. If you give them enough time, they are going to get in the pocket and cause pressure. I think that was the biggest reason why they were able to upset Ohio State, because that's a little bit more of a pro style offense that wants to attack downfield at a high rate. Makes sense with guys like Cardinal Tate and Jeremiah Smith, why they would want to do that. But it's not the best way to attack Miami. And so we've seen teams like Ole Miss actually have more success, even though they don't have as much offensive talent as Ohio State, just because they get rid of the ball quickly. They neutralize that strength of the Miami defense. Now, the Indiana offense isn't quite as fast-paced in terms of getting the ball out quickly and getting the ball into space as Ole Miss is. They will step back. They will take shots downfield, and they have the quarterback to do it in Mendoza. But it is almost 50% of their offense is quick dropbacks, or 0 or 1-step dropbacks, or RPO type plays. That's well above the average in college football. So it's a big part of the offense. So I think, even though we do see them in certain games drop back more often, because it's such a big part of the offense naturally, in a game like this where it makes sense to lean more into that, I would expect to see that. I think they'll distribute the ball pretty quickly, get the ball into space to their playmakers. They're not going to completely eliminate Miami's pass rush, but they should be able to neutralize it to a degree.
All right, then on the other side of the ball, we've got Carson Beck, we've got Malachi Toney, obviously some talented players on Miami, a different type of team, though, a different type of offense going up against this Indiana defense. I know Indiana's lost a couple guys along that defensive line, but talk to us a little bit about what you foresee happening when Miami has the football and how they match up with this Indiana defense.
Yeah, I'm going to get into some more numbers here on this side of the ball because it's an interesting matchup here. Miami has gotten to this point through the playoffs by running the ball, basically. Mark Fletcher is playing the best football of his career. He's running the ball really well. And like I mentioned, like all Mario Cristobal teams, they've got a great offensive line. And so they can do that against most defenses. This could be an area where they just can't quite get it done, though, because Indiana is just at another level compared to the teams that they've faced on this run through the postseason so far. Against Miami, they tend to see a lot of stacked boxes for a couple of reasons. One factor obviously is always the formations that you line up in, but another factor is they can't really throw the ball downfield all that well. It's not a huge part of the offense. They don't have the dynamic downfield weapons, and that's never been a strength of Carson Beck's game. So teams are more willing to cheat up into the box to defend the run, especially with a physical runner like Mark Fletcher back there. And so if you look at these two teams with stacked boxes, Miami is averaging 4.1 yards per attempt. That ranks 85th in the country. They face it a lot, and yet they're still not great at it. Indiana, they're allowing 2.8 yards per attempt with a stacked box. That ranks 4th in the country. They're absolutely dominant. Now, you might say, well, they face some pretty good defenses. Like Ohio State's a good defense this year, and Mark Fletcher had success against them. In this particular area, I think even Indiana stands head and shoulders above the other teams that they've faced. Just running through the defenses that they've faced so far this year with a stacked, or through the playoffs with a stacked box. Texas A&M, they're terrible. It's the big reason why we picked Miami in that game. They rank 131st in stacked box run defense. Ohio State, they're good, but they rank 30th. That's still a big difference from 4th from Indiana. And Ole Miss, they're kind of middle of the pack. They rank 50th. It was not a surprise that he had success in that game either. So Indiana is just, even compared to Ohio State, it seems to be another level of run defense in these particular formations that they're able to line up in. And if you stop the run game for Miami, I'm not sure Carson Beck is going to beat you. So I think Indiana has the ability to make Miami a little too one-dimensional for their liking and cause some problems.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see if they are able to continue to lean into that, or if it's going to set them up behind the chains. I assume that you don't necessarily like Miami's ability to overcome if they do have some 1st and 10 runs where they get stuck in 2nd and very long, 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8 situations. How frequently do you think that they might have success against this Indiana defense and get back on track and regain another 1st down if that happens?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to have a whole lot of success throwing the ball. If they get stuffed on the early downs and they're in tough down distance situations, it's going to be pretty brutal. They don't throw the ball downfield. They throw the ball. I forgot to write down the exact number, but if you check out the article on the website, I did write about this. But they throw the ball 5 yards or fewer at one of the highest rates in the nation. I think it's like 57%. That ranks in the top 10 highest rates. You would think with a, future NFL quarterback in Carson Beck, maybe he's only a backup in the next level, but he's definitely going to the league. You would think they would be attacking downfield more, and they just don't trust him to do that. In fact, in the playoffs so far, in these 3 games, he's only thrown the ball 10 or more yards downfield 26 times. He's only completed 11 of those passes. It's a really big factor in why they have been kind of vulnerable to some upsets this year, like the Louisville game and the SMU loss that they had. Beck was terrible against Louisville. That was a game where he threw 4 interceptions. They kind of force themselves to be one-dimensional because they don't want to get into one of those situations where Beck is turning the ball over so frequently. And if you force him to do it, you run the risk of those interceptions, which is particularly a big risk against Indiana. Beck, he's thrown 23 interceptions over the past 2 years. Interception numbers can sometimes be kind of fluky, but I always like to look at ball hawk rate, sort of an indicator of whether or not there's luck involved here. Ball hawk rate is just what percentage of the passes does the defense make a play on the ball. It doesn't have to be an interception. It could be a tipped pass, a dropped interception, or whatever. Carson Beck's ranked 105th in ball hawk rate allowed when he throws the ball 10 or more yards downfield. Indiana's defense, they rank 22nd by that same metric. So they are an opportunistic defense going up against a quarterback who puts the ball in harm's way at a high rate. So if they do stop the run and they're able to force Carson Beck to have to attempt more of those throws, that's not a situation Indiana wants to be in. And that's not a situation Miami wants to be in. It could snowball on them because that could be a situation where they start throwing the ball more often. Beck throws an interception or two and suddenly the floodgates open.
Right. And that 105th ball hawk rate, that's obviously terrible. And it's that's what happened and helped Indiana jump out last game, where they got the pick 6 on the very first play. And then everything was able to sort of snowball very rapidly from that point, with Oregon not being able to get anything started offensively. If the same type of thing happens here, where Miami falls behind early in the game, I'm not suggesting a pick 6 right out the gates. That's probably very unlikely. But if a similar thing happens, Miami then would have to be in a drop back passing game and forced to sort of abandon the run, which is something they haven't had to do this run throughout the postseason. So it would be an unfamiliar style of offense that they would then have to play. And it sounds like you don't think they necessarily have a lot of success. Before I get your official pick on the game, I do want to ask, just from the way the game sort of starts, we saw Indiana, when they went up against Alabama, it was more of a slower, like lean on them. Eventually the dam breaks and, Indiana's up, but it's not until the second half that they're late second quarter into the second half that they're really exploding. In the Oregon game, it was very early in the game. It just went massively sideways and just piled up from there. How do you foresee like the first 10 minutes of this game unfolding, the first possession or maybe 2 for each of these teams? Do you envision like a real testing one another out, nothing really happening? Because a lot of these, first quarters in some of these championship games start off slower than some people expect. There's not really just this boatload of points that comes early. Those tend to come later on. Do you foresee something like that happening in this game, or how do you foresee like the first quarter playing out in this one?
I think it probably plays out a little bit slower, so long as Indiana is able to stop Miami's trick plays. That's definitely a big part of the offense. Shannon Dawson likes to get creative. And as a big underdog, obviously that increases the odds that, the offensive coordinator, dips into the bag of tricks and tries to do something. I think there's a pretty good chance Dawson does try to do that in this game, just because he knows that you can't fall behind Indiana. He can't let his team get into obvious passing situations. So at some point, he's going to try to pull out a trick here at some point to try to get a big play, which is tough to do just with your traditional passing offense against Indiana. So he's going to try to do that. So long as Indiana can withstand that and hold off the trick play and not give up a big 50-yard touchdown or something like that early, I think it does kind of start slowly, where the teams just kind of trade punches early. Not a whole lot happens. I wouldn't be shocked if we even got to halftime and it's like maybe Indiana's up 10-7 or something like that, because both teams are playing a little bit slow. But Indiana is so good at making adjustments. Both of their coordinators, Mike Shanahan on offense, Bryant Haynes on defense, they just seem to figure it out as the game goes on, and suddenly it just starts to snowball on you. Like they figured out one or two things that are working, and they shut down your offense. They start making more plays on their side of the ball, and things just kind of spiral out of control. I could certainly see that happening where it's a really close game early. It looks like Miami's hanging around, and suddenly Indiana's up 2 scores late.
Hearing your analysis and just processing it real quickly, I am envisioning a Miami team that might not know if they're going to be able to have the opportunity from a game state perspective to run the ball in the fourth quarter, let's pretend, but they know to start the game they do, and they lean into what they do best. They try to go with a run first approach here. Indiana knows that that might be coming. So can they slow down the run while still being prepared for the trick play? Should be interesting the way that they start on that side of the ball, but I would be surprised if Miami comes out with something with a very different identity than what they've presented thus far. So if that's the way it starts, talk to me about how it ends. Who do you see winning this game? Do you see any value in the point spread with Indiana laying 7.5 or Miami taking 7.5? How do you envision the game will play out?
Yeah, if I'm betting on this game, I'm going to lay the points and take Indiana because I think it does ultimately slowly build and snowball to the point where they're winning late and by a significant margin. Like I said, if it's 10-7 at the half, that's not going to surprise me. But that 10-7 game could very easily end up with like a 31-13 Indiana win because then they start hitting big plays. Suddenly they're up by 10 points. Miami starts throwing the ball. Carson Beck throws an interception or two. It can unravel so fast against this Indiana team. That's kind of how I expect it to go. Like I said, the trick play is the one thing that maybe Miami can do to flip the script. If they hit a big trick play early in the game and they build that early lead, that could maybe change things a little bit. But I think that's really the only path to Miami holding this close late. So from a betting perspective, I think the safest way to approach it is just to lay the points on the whole game with Indiana.
Okay, then a lot of these championship games, although they do sometimes start slow, they do end up having very lopsided final scores because the team that's losing just has nothing more to lose. What's the harm in losing by 20 points? Who cares if I lose by 10 or 20? It doesn't matter. I've lost. Let me try to get back into the game. So they're going for it on fourth down at their side of the field. They're changing their identity and becoming very pass heavy, which results in incompletions, dead clock, those types of things. So do you foresee, this is a big spread for Indiana, like you said, sort of unprecedented for a team with the talent of the players they have to be laying this many points in the national championship. You like Indiana laying the 8.5. Do you see the upside? Like what's your final score? Do you think that they're covering this more often than not with ease, having like a 14-point, 17-point plus victory? Or do you see this game being very close to like the 7 to 10-point range? And, more often than not, you think that Indiana is able to cover, but it's not in a landslide?
I think they probably win in a landslide. I think by the time we get into the fourth quarter, at least midway through the fourth quarter, it's not competitive and Indiana's already celebrating on the sidelines. If I were going to go the opposite direction, I think, if I wanted to place money on Miami, like if you're a Miami fan or whatever, you just want to put something on Miami. I think if you felt like you needed to put money on Miami for whatever reason, I would play the money line because if the game is close, it's probably because Miami is surprisingly effective running the ball. And if you told me right now, hey, Mark Fletcher's going to average like 5.3 yards per carry, they're going to be able to run the ball, I would say, okay, that's a coin flip game. Miami can win that game. Absolutely. So I think if it's close, Miami's got a great chance to win because it means that they're running the ball and they're having success in that area. They can win that type of game. But if not, I don't see how it's going to be really hard for them to keep it within a touchdown. I think ultimately Indiana builds a lead and then it just kind of snowballs out of control because Miami's trying to throw the ball. Carson Beck's going to make a mistake. It's inevitable if he's forced into that type of game script. And the final score probably ends up looking pretty bad if that's the case.
Yeah. And to your point from earlier, not only does it mean that they had some success running the football, Miami, for them to take a bet on the money line, but also that they'll be able to run the ball in the fourth quarter, which is something we're not sure if they will be able to do if Indiana is able to jump out to a lead. So if Miami is able to have success running and run all 4 quarters, then they do have that shot, like you said, at pulling the outright upset. Talk to me briefly before we let you go about this total. Right now it's sitting 47.5 at some of the legal books, that you could bet online. In Vegas, it's sitting around 47 at most of those spots. Do you have any lean at all if you're looking to bet the total over or under 47 and a half points?
I would lean over because I think Indiana is capable of, getting into the 30s on their own. They could certainly, win by a blowout and still get the over just because they put up enough points on their own, especially if Carson Beck contributes to that, with a pick six or, an interception deep in their own territory. That could certainly, make it easy for Indiana to put up some points. So I would lean over. I don't love it though. I would probably prefer to just stay away from the total there just because, like I said, like a 31-13 kind of score. Indiana does a lot of scoring, but their defense is just so dominant that Miami can't contribute enough. That feels very plausible too. So lean over, but ultimately I would stay away from the total.
All right. If you guys enjoyed this conversation that I'm having with Ryan right now, I highly encourage you to go to sharpfootballanalysis.com and check out Ryan's detailed game write-up. As he mentioned, he's got a lot of other stats, data, nuggets, matchup angles there that we aren't getting into on the show that could help you for your analysis, your anticipation of the game, and some of the other bets that you might want to make. So that's up at sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can find it right there on the home page, especially if you're tuning in on Monday. You want to get ahead and just start previewing the game. This video helps, but also the article does as well. Ryan, outstanding analysis as always. We've really enjoyed hanging with you every single weekend this college football season, reading your write-ups, seeing your betting picks, and hearing you on the podcast. Like I told people before, we're really also excited to see you coming up very soon in the spring, where you're going to be dissecting for us the entire field of NFL prospects that are going to be draft eligible as we head into the 2026 NFL draft. That's always going to be a lot of fun, and you're one of the most educated in the entire industry on how you break these things down, and one of the most successful, in case you guys like doing this as well, mock draft experts out there. Ryan is always one of the best in the industry with his mock draft accuracy, so you're not going to want to miss his content. Thanks as always, Ryan, and enjoy this last game, and good luck. As I've mentioned many times on this show this season, we've partnered with Novig, America's #1 sports prediction market, to give you an exclusive opportunity to try out their platform. They are offered in many states sportsbooks are not allowed, including Texas, Florida, Georgia, and more. And right now you can get a purchase match of up to $100 with code Warren. Just click the Novig link in the description of the show below to get your $100 match when you open a new account. And don't forget, comment below who you think will score the first touchdown in the Rams-Bears game in the divisional round Sunday night for a chance to win an extra $100. All right, now it's time for one of your favorite segments, the props, with Rich Hribar, our fantasy football guru over at Sharp Football Analysis, loyal member of the Sharp Prop Squad, walking through three of Rich's favorite props to bet for this week's divisional round games. And we're going to start with the first game on board, Rich. We're going to look at the Denver Broncos game taking on this Buffalo Bills team. Buffalo, short rest, getting screwed, have to play the first game of the weekend out in Denver at elevation. And you're looking at the home quarterback, Bo Nix, to potentially have a good day. You're looking at Bo Nix completions. His numbers right now, as we look at the screen, 20 and a half everywhere. Everywhere it's 20 and a half. You could shop around for a little bit of juice. Very little variance there between them. Going over 20 and a half completions for Bo Nix. What is it about Nix and or the matchup versus the Bills defense that has you gravitating towards this one?
Yeah, I like this one a lot because since the J.K. Dobbins injury, Nix has cleared this in 6 of 7 games. He's actually had 23 or more completions in 6 of those 7 games, with the only exception being that Week 18 game kind of against Trey Lance. That was kind of like a weirder game script. But over that span, we actually have talked about this when I gave up a Bo Nix prop earlier in the season against Jacksonville, is that since the loss of J.K. Dobbins, Denver has really swerved into throwing the football a lot more. They've thrown the ball 7.6% over expectations based on the game state. That's second in the NFL, only behind the Arizona Cardinals. They've thrown the ball over pass rate expectations in all 7 games since the J.K. Dobbins injury. Over that span, they're 24th in the league in yards per rushing play, and they've really kind of used Bo Nix in the passing game to circumvent the rushing game. So Bo Nix has only averaged 7.3 air yards per attempt over that span. It's 24th in the NFL, 25% of his throws are at or behind the line of scrimmage. These are run plays, basically. That's 27th in the league. Only 28.1% of his throws are 10 or more yards downfield. That's 30th in the league. Got throws that come with high success rate circumventing the run game. So this is why I like this one in this game. I think they're going to have to use the Bo Nix in this kind of like short passing game as a version of their running the football.
Yeah, and there's also the ability to win no matter what the game state actually is here, because we know that they are passing at such a higher rate over expectation. Love the stat, what they're doing without J.K. Dobbins. So this is a good one. We're going to get this out to subs as well. Next one, you've got the very next game, and you've got the very next home quarterback. This time it's Sam Darnold going up against a beaten up San Francisco 49ers defense. He's had some time to rest. The 49ers are off of short rest. And you're looking at the same exact market. Sam Darnold completions, it's lined at 19.5. But in this case, you can find it as low as plus 100 if you want to go over. FanDuel right now has minus 102. Novig is minus 104. So you don't have to lay very much in order to go over on Sam Darnold's completions. They are the larger favorite here, laying 7.5 points as we currently speak. But what has you gravitating towards this one?
Yeah, this one has a couple different things pulling me in this direction. Well, first of all, Sam Darnold, these lines haven't calibrated for how Seattle's playing offense to close the season. He's actually completed 20 or more passes in 4 of his past 5 games, including week 18 against the 49ers, in a game where their running backs had 33 combined runs. So you have a little bit of the game state potentially being a little bit different too to help you out. But Seattle has really altered their approach with Sam Darnold and how teams have defended Jackson Smith and Jigbo, or, if you want to say just trying to rein in Sam Darnold, maybe not have him lose you the game when you have such an awesome defense. But over the past 7 games, Sam Darnold has only averaged 7.1 yards per pass attempt. That's 16th in the NFL. He led the NFL prior to that, 9.3 yards per pass attempt. He's 30th in air yards per pass attempt over that span, 5.9 air yards per pass attempt. He was number 1 in the NFL in air yards per pass attempt prior to that. He has a league low 5% of his passes on throws 20 or more yards downfield over the past 6 games. And his 6th lowest deep passing rates of the season have come in the past 6 games. Prior to that, he had a 14.8% deep passing rate. It was 4th in the NFL. So they're really asking him to throw shorter and have that to boost these completions. He's not relying on like these deep downfield shots that the Clint Kubiak offense was part of that. And this ties into the way the 49ers and Robert Saleh have played defense. They have shifted over the course of losing all their defensive players this season. They lost their safety, Jair Brown, last week. He's not going to play this week. As playing a more bend but don't break. They play coverage and they want you to throw underneath. 49ers allow a really high completion rate over their past 12 games, 67.4%. That's 29th in the NFL. But they are 11th in yards per pass attempt and 5th in yards per completion allowed because they're all short completions. Opponents against the 49ers over that span only average 7.6 air yards per pass attempt. That's the 9th lowest rate in the NFL. And as a byproduct of that, the 49ers allow 23.2 completions per game. 13 of 18 quarterbacks, including Sam Darnold, that have completed 20 or more completions against them this season.
Wow. All right. Well, this is one that I was not thinking of before you brought it to my attention. Obviously, great reasoning, very sound logic here to support it. So the Sam Darnold completions prop over, getting it at a great line value as well with that reduced juice. So don't have to risk a lot in order to win on that one. Another similar case where you don't have to risk a lot to win is on Woody Marks, the very next game, Sunday afternoon, which is the New England Patriots going up against the Houston Texans. And both of these teams obviously played last week. And in this market, you're looking at Woody Marks and his longest rush of 12.5. And right now we can see that the under is only minus 105, minus 106. So you're getting some great value going under at reduced juice. Talk to me a little bit about why you like Woody Marks to go under his longest rush against this Patriots defense. You have an outstanding stat on this one.
Yeah, and Woody Marks, coming off of his best rushing game of the season on Monday night, so you're kind of fading like the immediate market a little bit. But coming into Monday night game, out of 49 running backs, the 100 or more runs, Woody Marks was 48th in yards per carry. He was 45th in yards after contact per rush. He was 41st in explosive run rate, which runs us of 10 or more yards. So we are getting to kind of say like, hey, the freshest thing imprint on everyone's minds. We can go against the grain on that. But he's facing this New England run defense has been one of the toughest teams to run on when they're healthy. They are just coming off of allowing 30 yards on 12 attempts to the Chargers backfield on Sunday night. They got Milton Williams back at the very end of the season, week 18. They got Robert Spillane back in that playoff game. They are expecting to get Kyrus Tonga back for this game this week, who didn't play last week as well. With Williams and Spillane on the field, the Patriots have allowed 3.4 yards per carry to running backs. That would be the lowest rate in the NFL this season. With just Milton Williams on the field, they have a 65.2 success rate against running back runs, and they've allowed a run of 10 or more yards on 5.4% of runs, which would be number one in the NFL against running back runs. And then the stat you were kind of alluding to that we were talking about before the show coming on is that with Milton Williams on the field, the New England Patriots have faced 123 backfield runs. They've allowed one run of 13 or more yards on those 123 backfield runs with Milton Williams on the field. So that's kind of why we're going to use that to our advantage here in this matchup.
Yeah, that's incredible. One run out of 123. Some great value then going under. And plus, you never know. The game state obviously could be that the odds makers are correct and some of the early money is correct, coming in on New England, moving that back up to 3.5 at a lot of spots as of today. And New England Patriots are in the catbird seat here, playing with a little bit of an advantage in a lead. And the Houston Texans might need to play from behind, some less rushing attempts from this running back. So this is a good one. I like it a lot as well. Great find on that. And that'll do it, Rich. We were going to be back, obviously, conference championship weekend next week. Only 2 games there. And of course, Super Bowl. We got a lot of stuff in store for you guys. Super Bowl week leading into it. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So fewer games, but still a lot of fun doing these shows and these appearances with Rich. As a reminder, you can check all of his great analysis over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. He's got game previews, game write-ups. He's going to be back with some DFS takes and DFS suggestions on all of these players. So make sure you're checking out all of Rich's outstanding work over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. Rich, good luck. We'll talk to you soon.
Good luck, everyone.
All right, now joining me on Divisional Weekend, we've got our referee expert, Joe Gibbs. You can find all of his outstanding analysis over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, his weekly article breaking down all of the referee trends, comes up with some strategies for certain crews and gets into a little bit more detail on them. We're going to be breaking down a couple of games with Joe momentarily. The first one, Joe, we're going to be talking about the very first game of the entire Divisional Weekend. It's out in Denver, where the Buffalo Bills, off of short rest, have to travel to take on the Denver Broncos, who have extended rest, having that number 1 seed in the first round bye. If you look at the odds screen right now, Denver is currently laying between 1 and 1.5 points. This line has flipped. It was the Buffalo Bills opened as the small favorite. I mean, this game is still very close to a coin flip with this type of a number. The total is sitting right around at 46 at a lot of spots. You can see there's some variance there. FanDuel is 46.5. Other spots at 45.5. 46, generally not necessarily the most important number for a full game, but there is some variance there. Talk to us a little bit about Carl Cheffers, who is going to be our referee on this game. We know in these games, the crews switch and morph, and so it's not his same crew from the regular season, but based on your analysis of him as well as the crew that he has, what do you think is going to be the outcome for this game?
Yeah, so you're right about that. Cheffers is flying solo in this game. He's the head referee, but there are none of his regular season crew members with him, which is a departure from last year, actually. He did the Bills-Ravens game, the divisional round, and it was Cheffers in addition to 4 of his regular crew season members. And so this year they're all gone. It's just him, combination of people from different crews, which I detail in Sharp Football Analysis. The one thing I did notice was the makeup of the crew. You got some Novig, Land Clark, Clay Martin. They ranked 3 through 6, respectively, calling offensive holding penalties this season. Now, having said that, offensive holding penalties, like clockwork, dropped last week in the wildcard round. Penalties in general were down last week, 12.7 per game in the regular season, just 9 per game last week. Penalties on special teams declined last week. Defensive penalties declined last week. Offensive penalties went up, but not for offensive holding. So you add it all up, that's what we've got going on with Sheffer. He's a very good home field advantage referee. Over the past decade, home teams are about 62% win rate. In playoffs, home teams have a 65% win rate. So favors the home teams historically. I can almost copy and paste what I said last week with the Bills and Sheffers as I did last week with the Bills and Brad Allen. Buffalo has a very good record in the playoffs with Kyle Sheffers, 3-1, but all those games were at home. Now they're on the road, as they were last week in Jacksonville with Brad Allen. The game itself, Denver, very good home field advantage, arguably the best in the league. They rank in the top 10 at generating offensive holding and false starts on opposing offenses. That creates those longer yardage situations via penalty. The Broncos themselves are a top 10 penalized team for offensive holding. The Buffalo Bills rank number 1 for offensive holding. But as I just pointed out, that penalty does decline in the playoffs. So it may not be that big of a deal this week if based on history and what we saw last week. The league gives out a memo to these officiating crews. They don't want that penalty called. This is a game that is viewed by a wider audience, maybe more casual fans, and the league wants an aesthetically pleasing contest. And so the best way to achieve that is to call less offensive holding penalties, and that's what we've seen over the years. So the offensive holding stuff, I'll put it out there, but I just don't know if they're going to call it as much as they do historically in the regular season. Defensive penalties overall are down, and this definitely helps Denver. They were the number 1 defense surrendering automatic first downs via penalty this season. That dropped last week along with defensive penalties. As a result, defensive penalties awarding automatic first downs dropped. So Denver can be a little more aggressive on defense, as can Buffalo. It works both ways. You will be provided more leeway than what you would normally be in a regular season game. So those are some of the key points. The game itself, look, I can say what I said last week. Jacksonville, they're at home last week. Denver, they're at home this week. Buffalo has the best player on the field. I still lean the home team here. I lean Denver. They got the number 1 seed. They got the rest. Buffalo in a bad spot as far as the schedule goes, but they do have Josh Allen. So I selected Denver in this game. But again, it's one of those ones where nothing would surprise me, and we'll see what happens on Saturday.
Does this crew, or obviously not the crew per se, but Sheffers, with allowing these defensive players maybe a little bit more leeway and calling slightly fewer penalties, do you think that helps something like the under in this contest with these two teams meeting one another, or do you not really have a feel for how their involvement impacts the total?
Yes, I think in theory it helps the under because, again, if the defenses are provided a little bit of leeway, which they should be, in theory that helps them hold a little bit more and not get called for it, and it puts the offense at a disadvantage. Now, to balance that out, there are less offensive holding penalties called as well. So, it's a balancing act here. Historically, Sheffers has been a very good under referee in the playoffs. I think off the top of my head, in playoff games, not including Super Bowls, mind you, but actual playoff games at a specific home field, I think he's like 11-2 to the under in his career in playoff games. So, you got that going for you if you like the under this week.
I'll tell you, I haven't done this just once, but multiple times talking to different coaching staffs have advised figure out what jersey the other team is wearing. If they're wearing black jerseys, blue jerseys, whatever, navy jerseys, DBs, defensive players wear navy gloves, navy sleeves, anything that can kind of help make it so that it's not obvious. You don't want a white glove and a white sleeve if it's cold out going up against a dark color jersey for the other team. I know some players are into the vibes and how they feel they look, but if you want to win the game, you need every advantage that you can get.
That's one of the first things I look at when I watch a game is what are the DBs wearing? If they're wearing like bright yellow gloves and the other team's got blue jerseys on, well, I mean, you're at a disadvantage right there. I did notice Houston last week against the Patriots. They had against the Steelers, predominantly the same color gloves as the Steelers jerseys. And so, yeah, that little bit of grabbing just sort of flies under the radar a bit as opposed to two colors that contrast with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Same for the offensive line. If you're the offensive line, you want to wear something that the defenders are wearing since you're going to be contacting them so frequently. Those little edges might add up, and you never know when something like that could potentially make a difference. Next up, we're going to go to the last game of the weekend. This is the game in Chicago where the weather could be obviously very cold. The LA Rams from California and a dome are going to play in this cold weather. Matthew Stafford with his banged up finger. Hopefully it's close to 100% for everybody who just wants to see a clean, even game and some fun and whatever Matthew Stafford can bring to the table. We want to see the Rams best versus the Bears best. We'll see if we end up getting that. This game right now, the point spread shows that the Rams are favored by 3.5 points. Some spots you could see are 4-point favored to the LA Rams. But the Chicago Bears, obviously the darling team, the new team, the team on the come up with Ben Johnson as their coach and, talking trash to opponents and bringing a little bit of spiciness to the NFL of late, taking on these LA Rams. This game is being officiated by Shawn Hochuli, which I know a lot of people are familiar with that name, Joe. So talk to us a little bit about Hochuli's trends, his crew makeup, and what you think his involvement means to the outcome of this game.
Yeah, so it's Hochuli, who is never far from controversy. It's him and one of his regular season crew members, and then it's a mixture of, other crews in there. It's funny, Puka Nacua made some headlines a month or so ago about, officiating crews playing to the camera, calling stuff because it's on prime time. Well, if there's Exhibit 1A for what Puka was frustrated at, it's Shawn Hochuli. So it's just ironic that he ends up on this big game here. And he actually may get the Super Bowl. One of the 4 referees from this weekend, I don't think Sheffers is going to get it, so it's basically one of 3, is probably going to be the Super Bowl referee. So in theory, Shawn Hochuli has a 33% chance of being the Super Bowl referee. So keep that in mind. If your team is potentially going to be in the Super Bowl, he could be the guy on it. So let's get back to the game. Home team's just 3-3 in the playoffs with Shawn Hochuli. Never been a great home field referee. His crew, traditionally they focus on the offensive side of the ball. Not so much this year. They've actually sort of toned it down, relatively speaking. But again, like I said last week, offensive penalties became a thing again. So he ranked third in penalty per game average. They're going to tone it down. They may revert back to focusing more on the offensive side of the ball and not calling as many defensive penalties, because he ranked second this year, awarding automatic first downs via penalty. Ranks number 1 for unnecessary roughness, number 2 for roughing the passer, number 2 for defensive pass interference. So the unnecessary roughness, though, that will still be a thing. Those penalties actually went up last week, and that doesn't surprise me because those standalone games, the referees are more inclined to throw unnecessary roughness penalties. They know everyone's watching. They know the league execs are watching. And so those 50-50 calls, they are much quicker to pull the trigger on those as opposed to a regular Sunday, game between the Jets and the Titans that nobody cares about. So as far as the penalties themselves, the Bears offense, 54% of their overall penalties are the team's penalties. So that's higher than average. The Rams are one of the most efficient in the league historically. So they rank 31st in penalty per game average. Their offense is the least penalized on third down. That's key. The Bears defense ranks in the bottom 5, generating offensive holding and false starts on opposing offenses. So if that holds, then the Rams should be able to play ahead of the chains at a high rate, which is a huge advantage because the Rams defense can get after it, and then they're pretty decent at generating those offensive holds on opposing offenses. Whether they call it, I don't know. The Rams are a top 10 beneficiary of automatic first downs via penalty. Now, I don't know how the weather's going to impact the passing game here. That could be an issue, but generally the Rams are pretty lethal. When they throw the ball, they're pretty good at picking up those chunk plays via penalty yards. So we'll see if that continues this weekend. That's really the main thing. Hochuli's the wild card in this one. You know yourself, Warren. He loves to get involved. He's never far from controversy. The Rams had a big game with him a few years back with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, actually the divisional round. And Hochuli threw a taunting flag on Tom Brady. So he doesn't mind calling the big plays, the big penalties in the high leverage moments. I like the Rams here. To me, I like Chicago last week, and I've had a pretty good read on this season, the second half of the year. But look, it's basically hang around, come back in a Houdini-like way every week. And eventually that's got to run out, that luck. I mean, you're going up here against a Rams team with championship pedigree. You've got a great coach, arguably the MVP, a quarterback. To me, they're still the best team in the league. They got unlucky because of two Brad Allen calls against the Seahawks. So otherwise, the Rams would be the number 1 seed. So to me, they're the best team in the league. They're built for these moments. They got the championship pedigree versus a Bears team that's overachieved and has really got to this point on the back of a lot of magic tricks in the fourth quarter to win games they probably shouldn't have, but I think their luck runs out this week.
It'll be interesting to see how Hochuli, the crew, play into this game, as well as the cold weather and that environment. Hochuli, like you said, not far from controversy, also not far from at times, throwing a penalty on the home team and having the crowd boo him. It seems like he takes enjoyment out of making an elongated call that will penalize the home team to elicit some jeers from the crowd. Just kind of amps him up, gets his juices going, so to speak. And you might need that in a cold night in Chicago. Well, as usual, Joe, outstanding stuff. If you guys want more analysis from Joe on this divisional round, he's got it over at Sharp Football Analysis. You can read his article over there. And of course, Joe, good luck, and we'll see you again for the conference championship games next weekend.
Great. Thanks, Warren. Good luck.
All right, we've gotten some best bets from Rich. We've gotten some bets from Joe. We've gotten some bets from Ryan in the College Football National Championship. But now it's my turn. It's my turn to share with you my Novig value play of the week. And we're going to do something similar to last week, except a slight spin on things. Last week, as you know, with the prop market being opened up as early as Sunday night, as soon as the games are over on Sunday, it's a lot harder to save the best bet of the week for a Thursday into Friday podcast as we record this. And so as a result, I don't want to give you guys the leftovers. I did tell you last week that our best bet that I gave to subs with Josh Allen's pass attempts over, and he hit that even at the line that you guys were able to get on Friday on this podcast. Now, I didn't count that to my record. I'm still keeping the record at 13-4 this season, which is 73%, 35-13 lifetime, which is 72%. I'm not changing that because I told you it's not counting win or lose to the record because the line is not the same. But here's the thing. This week, I went out and gave my best bet on Wednesday. It was a longest market, longest rush, reception, completion, that market. And the line has moved by 3 full yards since I gave it out. All of you who are listening, who are subscribers, know what that is. I still like it, but there's another bet that I shared with subs that I like, and it hasn't moved nearly as much, and I see more value there. So once again, this is not going to technically be counted towards my record, win or lose, as my best bet of the week. The best bet of the week was given to subs. You could have been a sub and seen that best bet and gotten in on it, and it's moved 3 yards in value, though I still see some value in some of the aspects of that bet. I'm going to talk to you about Khalil Shakir and his receptions market. Right now, this is sitting at 5.5 at a variety of different spots, and I think there is still some value in going over Khalil Shakir's receptions. And let me talk to you a little bit about why that is. The Buffalo Bills right now are being faded in the betting marketplace. Money is coming in on the Denver Broncos. If the Buffalo Bills were to lose this game, then they will fall into the trend where in 4 out of the 5 losses, Khalil Shakir has had 6+ receptions, which is what you need to hit this wager. But a lot has changed since the earlier part in the season where Shakir was hitting this number with regularity in losses. Mainly that this receiving core of the Buffalo Bills has been decimated by injury and got even further decimated in Jacksonville. And now they're playing on a short week in Denver. Let me talk about that. First and foremost, the Buffalo Bills were already on the weaker side of receiving units, and then they lost Josh Palmer, put on IR, Gabe Davis, now put on IR, Terrell Shavers tore his ACL, he's done too. Those 3 players are now out for this receiving core. That leaves them with 3 healthy receivers on the roster, one of which is Keon Coleman, who the team doesn't really have a lot of confidence in. One of which is Brandon Cooks, who we bet his overs last week, knowing the position he could be in. But the issue with this is Brandon Cooks now is going up against a very different type of matchup than he had last week in Jacksonville, where they have a poor secondary and the ability to be explosive down the field. This Denver Broncos defense is elite at outside perimeter receivers and elite at keeping explosive plays to a minimum in the passing game. They have allowed the fewest targets, fewest points per target to receivers, 6.8 yards per target, and a league low 1.9% touchdown rate to receivers. And on throws 20 plus yards down the field to receivers, they are allowing just a 28% catch rate, which is third best in the NFL, third lowest in the NFL for offenses. So a lot of what they use Brandon Cooks for is going to be minimized by the strength of this Denver Broncos defense. Then you look at the tight end position. You're looking at a tight end in Dalton Kincaid, who's clearly not at 100%. It looked like that last week. He's not going to be any better this week. He was in a walking boot. Sean McDermott said there's nothing to the walking boot, but he hurt his knee before. Now he's in a walking boot. Doesn't sound great. Obviously, he's still going to play in this game, but how explosive and productive is he going to be? Then you've got Josh Allen going up against a defense that I think the Bills are going to have more success running the football, yes, than they did last week. So Josh Allen might not have as many total overall pass attempts here. However, that being said, you're going to need to get rid of the football quickly against this pass rush. And that's where Khalil Shakir comes into play. You're not going to have time for all these long developing routes. Josh Allen's not at 100%. And I sort of envision a style of game here potentially for the Buffalo Bills, like they played against the Houston Texans. If you guys remember that game, it was on prime time. Josh Allen dropped back to pass and was targeting Khalil Shakir early and often. He threw 10 times. Khalil Shakir caught 8 passes in that game. Most of them were just a couple of yards down the field because Shakir was banged up. He could barely move. Finally, on the last drive of the game, he took off around the end and produced a big gain, which put the Buffalo Bills in field goal position. But this is not a passing offense right now that has a lot of options. And I think because of the speed at which Josh Allen's going to need to get rid of the football, Khalil Shakir sitting here at 5.5 receptions just seems very achievable. And if you look at last week's game, a similar sort of game, except I believe the Buffalo Bills had to throw the ball a little bit more because they couldn't run it quite as effectively. So that might change here. But a similar game in that Shakir was targeted 12 times, caught 12 passes. And one of the reasons that he caught all of those passes is because of his target depth. If you look at Khalil Shakir's target depth in the game last week, it was 1.8 air yards down the field. The week before that, it was 0.86 air yards down the field. He is getting a lot of passes thrown to him behind the line of scrimmage. In fact, according to Rich Hribar, wrote it up in his outstanding game preview, which you can read over at sharpfootballanalysis.com, 39% of Shakir's targets have come at or behind the line of scrimmage this year. That is the highest rate in the NFL for any wide receiver. Defenses can't stop that. It's not going to really hurt the defense. I mean, if you just pepper a receiver behind the line of scrimmage, like you come up and try to stop him and let him gain a couple of yards, that's not going to kill the defense. But the defense can't line up and play press man coverage in your own backfield before the snap. So those, if they want to throw 4, 5, 6 times to Khalil Shakir, lined up in the backfield, lined up at receiver, but throwing the pass behind the line of scrimmage, there's nothing an elite pass defense of the Denver Broncos can do to stop that. And that's exactly how the Buffalo Bills have been utilizing Khalil Shakir. So I think this receptions bet is potential lateralable as well. You can take it 7+, 8+, 9+, etc. Have at it with a little bit of pizza money if you want to. Once again, this is not the best bet of the week. I already gave that to subscribers, but this is another bet that I did give to subscribers that I really do like. We're not counting it to the record, win or lose, but I think that this has some solid value here. I think you should look to ladder it a little bit as well. And that'll be my Novig value of the week for the divisional round. And that'll do it for our divisional round preview over here at Sharp Football Analysis, the fastest growing betting show on the planet. Make sure that you guys are subscribed over on YouTube as well as your favorite podcast platform. It's going to be a great weekend of games. Ends on Monday night with the national championship game. A lot to look forward to, a lot of great football in store for us. We'll see you guys soon. Good luck.